Wouldn't it be like the most petty, humiliating, yet startling thing if I just fired my hat at?
People would ask me from the publishing world, did I ever think I would do an autobiography or memoir? And I always said, no, don't think so. But I asked Tom one day, and he said, well, if you ever do it, focus on your childhood. There was a point where he was delusional and having kind of episodes that were drug-related.
For years, Ron Howard seemed like the one Hollywood legend who kept himself spotless. Always smiling, always calm, the golden boy turned powerhouse director with a record most dream about. But behind that calm face, there was a storm brewing, silent, heavy, and packed with memories he never shared. Everyone saw perfection, but Ron was carrying stories that could shake up the very image people had of him. Now, after the heartbreaking passing of Rob Reiner, the whole entertainment world feels shaken. And Ron, he's finally opening up, and what he's saying is leaving people stunned. He's pulling the curtain back on the real Hollywood, the quiet rivalries, the emotions that never made it on camera, and that strange mix of friendship and competition only insiders understand. Reiner's loss hit Ron deeply. You can feel it in his words. It made him realize just how fragile this whole game is. One day you're on top, the next, everything changes. Even the brightest stars have messy, complicated ties behind those red carpet smiles. It's wild how raw it feels now. Like he's not just talking about a friend, but about something that's haunted him for years. Ron's silence is cracking, and every word he shares feels like a window into something Hollywood never wanted out. He's hinting at memories linked straight to Rob Reiner, moments that were more personal than anyone ever guessed. People are whispering, wondering what really happened between those two legends. The story of Ron Howard, born March 1st, 1954, in Duncan, Oklahoma, suddenly hits harder than ever. Long before fame even made sense, he was raised by actor Rance Howard and actress Jean Spiegel in a home where creativity ruled, but discipline kept everyone grounded. It was a world built on imagination, long hours, and that constant Hollywood uncertainty that shapes stars before they even realize it. That Hollywood world didn't just shape Ron, it bonded him in ways no one ever saw coming, especially with someone like Rob Reiner. And now, with what Ron's finally revealing, people are rethinking everything they thought they knew about the two of them. Before most kids could even talk, Ron Howard was already in front of cameras. At just 18 months old, he stood under those blazing studio lights for the movie Frontier Woman, completely unaware that his first gig was the start of a lifelong deal with fame itself. One tiny scene and boom, destiny locked in. From that moment on, there was no stepping back, even if he wanted to. By the late 1950s, the Howard family packed up and chased the California dream. Television was exploding, and they were ready to ride the wave. But that move changed everything. Normal life basically vanished overnight. Dinner tables turned into script rehearsals, and his dad, Rance Howard, juggled military duties while running between auditions. Little Ron, still losing baby teeth, was already rehearsing lines like a seasoned actor. Instead of playing tag with kids down the block, his world became sound stages and studio backlots. His playground wasn't grass and sunshine. It was cables, cameras, and bright lights that never turned off. Years later, Ron would look back and call those years a golden cage. Safe? Yes, but deeply lonely. Everything sparkled, yet it all felt hollow. He had fame, comfort, and success before he could even spell those words. But deep down, he was trapped in a life built for adults, missing out on simple joys other kids didn't even think twice about. Then came the turning point, October 3rd, 1960. The day the Andy Griffith Show hit television screens and turned 6-year-old Ron into America's sweetheart, Opie Taylor. Overnight, he became the face of innocence, that all-American kid everyone adored. But behind that glowing image, there was a quiet little boy doing homework inside a tiny studio room at Desalu, listening to the sounds of real laughter drifting in from the outside world. His father fought hard to keep him grounded, pushing for better scripts, teaching him discipline, and reminding him every day, never act cute, just act honest. That single piece of advice shaped Ron's entire artistic soul. It was his anchor in a world where everything else felt unreal. But even with his father's love and protection, nothing could fully erase that ache. The pain of being the child everyone adored on screen, yet feeling like he belonged to everyone but himself. Somewhere in all that pressure, fame, and spotlight, little Ron started to understand the price of being perfect, and it was heavier than anyone could imagine. Rob Reiner was climbing the same Hollywood mountain, another young soul trying to find his balance while the spotlight burned hot. Fame lifted him up, but it also trapped him in that invisible box where every move was watched and judged. The pressure, the lights, the endless eyes, it never really stopped, even after the cameras cut. That kind of weight doesn't fade, it sticks to you. And for Ron Howard, it shaped everything. The man, the filmmaker, even the way he saw himself. Now, decades later, Ron admits something raw. Those early wounds never healed. They lingered deep inside, shaping how he viewed fame, family, and others like Rob Reiner, who understood that strange cocktail of admiration and loneliness all too well. Both men lived under the glow of cameras that made them look happy, while hiding the ache no one else could see. When Ron hit his teenage years, the world thought he had it all. To the public, he was success in human form. But behind that polished image was a kid carrying the emotional load of someone twice his age. When the Andy Griffith Show ended in April 1968, Ron was only 14, but he'd already spent 8 long seasons inside a picture-perfect world that didn't actually exist. Surrounded by kind adults and TV family, he grew up in a world built on scripts, not the messy, beautiful chaos of real teenage life. There were no wild mistakes, no rebellion, no freedom to figure himself out. His education was split right down the middle, half in classrooms in Burbank, half on sound stages between takes with tutors, whispering over camera noise. While grips rolled dollies past his desk, he studied math just inches from a moving camera. Lunch wasn't with kids his age. It was with Andy Griffith, Don Knotts, and the crew. There was love there, yes, but also a haunting reminder that he wasn't living like everyone else. And then came a moment he never forgot. During The Music Man in 1962, Ron was just 8, standing in front of a dance scene that terrified him. He looked up at Shirley Jones and quietly said, "I can't do it, Shirley." She comforted him, helped him steady his nerves, and the crew worked their magic, filming him from the knees up to hide his shaky steps. The audience saw charm and confidence, but inside, that little boy was scared stiff. Pressure and fear swirled together behind that sweet smile everyone adored. Moments like that say everything about why Ron's empathy for Rob Reiner runs so deep. Both of them were molded by the same blinding spotlight, guided by fathers who tried to protect them while the world expected perfection. They learned early that behind every flawless take, there's a kid silently trying to breathe, trying to survive the weight of everyone's expectations. Those quiet anxieties never really left Ron. They just learned to wear a mask. Over time, he perfected the art of looking calm even when his heart was racing. That became his hidden armor, his secret weapon to make it in a city that devours weakness. Hollywood saw confidence, but what it didn't see was a man who learned to fake peace just to stay afloat. While guys like Rob Reiner were making waves for being loud, bold, and unafraid to speak their minds, Ron Howard took a different route. He played it cool, watching, learning, and studying everyone around him with that calm, laser-focused attitude he was famous for. Then came Happy Days in 1974, a turning point so huge it rewrote his story all over again. Ron was just 19 when he walked into Gary Marshall's office, completely unaware he was about to sign on for another role that would make him America's favorite all over again. As Richie Cunningham, he became the definition of the perfect boy next door. Polite, loyal, and impossibly wholesome. But while the world fell in love with Richie, Ron started feeling that same old trap closing in, fame boxing him in once more. That clean-cut image everyone adored began to smother the real person behind the smile. By 1977, Ron was 23, but still pretending to be a teenager on screen, frozen in time while the real world outside was changing fast. The streets were alive with protests. Culture was shifting. and people his age were challenging everything they'd been told. Yet Richie Cunningham stayed stuck in the past, untouched by the real world. That disconnect started eating away at Ron until he finally reached his breaking point. He wrote a memo straight to the ABC network, asking for one simple thing, a storyline that mentioned the Vietnam War, something real, something that reflected the world people were actually living in. But the answer came fast, and it was a hard no. That rejection didn't spark an angry outburst. Instead, it sank deep, turning into something heavier, quiet frustration mixed with burnout. Ron started to feel invisible, buried beneath a character who wasn't him anymore. He was living someone else's life, while his own was stuck on pause. Every episode, every laugh track, every stage smile, it all reminded him how far he was drifting from what he really wanted to say. And then came the breakthrough, that moment of clarity. If Ron wanted to grow, to find his voice again, he had to take control. He realized the only way to create something real was to move behind the camera. Directing wasn't just a dream, it was survival, his escape route. It was the one thing that could finally let him breathe after years of being told what to say, how to act, and who to be. That spark, that moment where he chose to reclaim his voice, mirrored the same awakening Rob Reiner would later experience too. Two men, both raised by Hollywood, both fighting to break free from the same system that built them. For Ron, directing became more than a career move. It was liberation. Stepping behind the camera felt like breaking out of a cage made of applause and expectation. He finally had the power to shape his own story instead of just acting in someone else's version. And though he and Rob Reiner couldn't have been more different in style or public image, both found the same truth. Sometimes, you have to step out of the spotlight to really be seen. That long-awaited taste of freedom finally hit in 1977, and it came with an offer Ron Howard couldn't ignore. Roger Corman, the king of low-budget hits, told him, "Star and eat my dust, and I'll let you direct your own movie." That deal flipped Ron's whole world upside down. This wasn't about fame anymore. It was about control, creativity, and finally owning his craft for the very first time. That promise turned into Grand Theft Auto, a wild car crash comedy that Ron co-wrote with his father, Rance Howard. They had just $62,000 to pull it off, basically pocket change by Hollywood standards. Yet they managed to wreck around 70 cars and turn that tiny gamble into a $15 million box office smash. It was insane. For the first time, Ron wasn't just performing in someone else's story, he was building his own. That rush of control, of calling every shot, was intoxicating. It gave him a sense of power acting could never deliver. But in Hollywood, every bit of control comes with a hidden cost. Suddenly, every project felt personal. Every camera angle, every note from a producer, every edit, it all cut deep. Ron poured his soul into every frame, obsessing over the smallest details, like everything depended on it. The wins kept stacking up. Night Shift in 1982, Splash in 1984, then Cocoon, Willow, and Parenthood. Each one boosted his reputation and his budgets, but also tightened the pressure. Studios started treating Ron like a sure bet, a guaranteed success machine. And that kind of trust? It's both flattering and suffocating. The higher he climbed, the more the weight of expectation sat on his shoulders. Every film had to be perfect. Every scene had to deliver. That silent pressure followed him everywhere, from the editing room to his own home, and it never really let go. By the early 90s, Ron wasn't the kid from Mayberry anymore. He was a Hollywood heavyweight, a director whose name meant something. But that spotlight, it didn't just shine, it burned if you stood under it too long. Just like Rob Reiner, Ron had stepped into a zone where success came with a cost. Sleepless nights, endless deadlines, and that constant fear of slipping even once. Ron's obsession with control wasn't about ego, it was about proving something to himself. Every film was a test, every project a chance to see if he could push further than before. That same relentless drive helped him understand what directors like Rob Reiner were going through too. The long nights that blurred into dawn, the crushing need to deliver brilliance every single time, and that quiet exhaustion that creeps in when the applause fades. Then came 1995, the year that nearly broke him and defined him all at once, Apollo 13. This wasn't just another movie, it was his mission, his statement piece. Ron was determined to tell that story with total authenticity. No shortcuts, no fake drama, just the raw, human truth of what those astronauts lived through. He pushed realism to the edge, so much so that the crew actually filmed 612 zero-gravity sequences. That's how far Ron Howard would go for truth, even if it nearly pushed him past his limits. Inside NASA's legendary Vomit Comet, where each burst of weightlessness lasted just 23 seconds, Ron Howard was chasing realism like a man possessed. He didn't want movie magic, he wanted the truth. Instead of settling for props, Ron and his crew built mission control from scratch using actual NASA panels that cost just $1 each. Every light, every switch, every flicker had to be flawless, because in his mind, anything less than perfect wasn't an option. Ron was in deep. He pushed himself harder than ever. 18-hour days, 3 straight months, surviving on barely any sleep, all to make sure every detail screamed authenticity. He refused to dumb down even the most complex science. If real astronauts lived it, audiences had to feel it. But that kind of dedication doesn't come cheap. There's a fine line between passion and punishment, and Ron was inching right past it without realizing. Then one morning, his body just quit. He collapsed right there on set. Severe exhaustion, dehydration, total burnout. The production froze instantly. For a day and a half, everything stopped while Ron recovered. When he finally came back, pale, drained, but still determined, his cast and crew greeted him with a surprise. They were all wearing shirts that read, "Mission Control." It was their message to him. "We've got you. We'll follow you anywhere." Ron smiled that calm, humble smile the world knows so well. But inside, something shifted. He knew the truth. He'd gone too far. The line between passion and self-destruction had vanished, and he had crossed it without even noticing. That painful wake-up call hit deep. For the first time, Ron understood something Rob Reiner had wrestled with too, that the price of brilliance can sometimes be losing yourself along the way. From that moment on, the realization haunted him. Ron had turned into the kind of perfectionist who could push himself beyond the edge, not out of arrogance, but out of obsession. And that truth stayed with him for years, not just because of what it did to his body, but because of what it quietly took from the people who mattered most. Those brutal lessons about control, truth, and the illusion of perfection completely reshaped how Ron saw Hollywood. He began to see its shine and its cost, what it demands from those who dare to chase greatness too hard. So when the devastating news broke about Rob Reiner's passing, it hit Ron like a wave. But it wasn't just sadness, it was recognition. He felt the regret, the reflection, the heavy understanding of what relentless dedication can steal from a person. Both men had lived under the same creative fire, chasing perfection with everything they had, and both learned how easily that fire could turn into isolation if you're not careful. But even before Reiner's death, Ron had already faced his own heartbreak, one that still lingers like a shadow. The year was 1991, and on paper, life couldn't have looked better. His daughter, Jocelyn, had just been born, his career was soaring, and his creative freedom had reached an all-time high. But behind the perfect picture, there was an ache, a silent tug between art, family, and the weight of a dream that never seemed to rest. By the early 90s, Ron Howard was the director every studio wanted, a guaranteed hitmaker whose name alone meant box office gold. So when Universal announced a 6-month shoot for Far and Away in Ireland, Ron didn't hesitate. He thought he could handle it. He told himself it was just part of the job. But 6 months across the ocean is a long time, especially when you've got a newborn and a young family waiting at home. Cheryl, his rock and lifelong partner, stayed behind raising their newborn twins and their daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard, holding everything together while Ron chased perfection on another continent. Meanwhile, Ron was buried alive in chaos, endless rewrites, freezing weather, production delays, and that suffocating studio pressure that never seems to let go. He kept repeating the same promise to himself. It's temporary. It's worth it. But deep down, something in him knew. He was drifting too far from what really mattered. When he finally came home, the silence in the house hit him like a punch to the chest. The laughter that used to fill the rooms felt faint, almost foreign. The connection, the warmth, had cracked. He looked around and realized too late that success had taken more than he ever meant to give. And then came the moment that broke him. As he walked through the door, his baby daughter Jocelyn looked at him and didn't recognize him. Bryce, his oldest, barely reacted. Cheryl, the woman who had stood by him through every storm, wore an exhaustion so deep it didn't even need words. That single moment nearly shattered him. Years later, in 2025, Ron finally admitted that memory still haunted him, that it broke something inside. Because that was the day he learned the cruel truth. All the fame, all the awards, all the success meant nothing if it cost him the people he loved most. That day, he made a promise. Quiet, but fierce. Never again. He swore he'd never disappear like that. Never let the chase for greatness steal time from the people who gave his life meaning. But life has a way of testing promises. Fast forward to 2005, during the grueling reshoots for Cinderella Man. The old habits came roaring back. Sleepless nights, constant decision-making, the relentless pressure to make it perfect. Ron was gone for months again. And when he came home this time, the déjà vu was brutal. His kids had grown, not just taller, but older in spirit. Life had kept moving while he was stuck in a cycle of just one more shoot. Cheryl had done what she always did, kept the family steady with quiet grace, but Ron could see the toll it took. She had carried more than her share again. That second wake-up call hit even harder. Later, Ron confessed that it forced him to face something buried deep, a pattern that started all the way back in his childhood acting days. He had been trained to say yes to everything, to push past exhaustion, to prove over and over that he deserved his place in the industry. That hunger to be perfect, to never disappoint, had built his career, but it had also built his guilt. It wasn't until 2025, standing at John Burroughs High School during his and Cheryl's 50th wedding anniversary, that Ron finally let that guard drop for good. Surrounded by the same halls where his dreams began, he looked at Cheryl, the one who had held his world together through every triumph and every absence, and felt something shift. In that moment, he wasn't Ron Howard, the director, or the legend, or the Hollywood name. He was just a man who finally understood that love, not perfection, was the masterpiece he'd been chasing all along. At John Burroughs High School, the very place where Ron and Cheryl first met, he unveiled a gift that left everyone speechless. A single bench, donated in her honor, carved with her name. But it wasn't the bench that silenced the crowd, it was Ron's words. With tears in his eyes, he said he would trade every award, every blockbuster, every ounce of fame, just to get back the lost time with his kids. That moment wasn't about Hollywood. It was about humanity. Raw, real, and humbling. And maybe that's exactly why the loss of Rob Reiner hit him so hard. Because when Rob's passing made headlines, it wasn't just the end of an era. It was a mirror held up to everything Ron had lived, lost, and learned along the way. Both men had spent decades chasing their dreams under that same blinding spotlight. And both knew just how high the true price of those dreams could be. Rob Reiner had lived his life wide open, passionate, outspoken, fearless, and loyal to both his art and his beliefs. But there are some battles no one can truly control, no matter how powerful or talented they seem. Watching Rob's final chapter unfold hit Ron deeply, stirring something raw inside him. It made him think about the people who shaped him long before the fame, before the awards, before the endless expectations. Because before the red carpets and studio deals, before the fame that turned him into a household name, there was one bond that built Ron's foundation: his unshakable connection with his younger brother, Clint Howard. To the public, Clint was that familiar face, the quirky, lovable character actor popping up in everything from Star Trek to Apollo 13. But to Ron, Clint was something much deeper. The one person who truly understood what it meant to grow up under the glare of those relentless studio lights. Together, they navigated a world that was as strange as it was glamorous. Two kids trying to stay normal in a place that didn't allow much normal at all. They grew up side by side on neighboring sets, passing each other in studio hallways filled with tangled cables, buzzing lights, and exhausted adults rushing between takes. Both were earning paychecks before they could even spell their names, delivering lines before they had any idea who they really were. In an industry that demanded perfection instead of patience, Clint became Ron's mirror, a constant reminder that he wasn't alone. Someone else got it. Someone else understood the beautiful, bizarre, and exhausting reality of growing up on camera. They weren't just brothers. They were co-workers, confidants, and survivors of a Hollywood childhood no outsider could ever fully picture. But adulthood brought its own challenges, ones neither of them saw coming. As Ron's career exploded, directing hit after hit, becoming one of Hollywood's most respected names, Clint was quietly fighting demons of his own. The constant pace, the pressure to perform, the judgment that never stopped, it all began to eat away at him. By the late 1980s, things had started to spiral. Ron watched helplessly as his brother slipped further from the life they had built together, the one built on childhood dreams and shared survival. By 1990, everything came crashing down. Ron, heartbroken and desperate to save the person who had once kept him grounded, finally drew a line. He reached his breaking point, not out of anger, but out of a love so fierce it scared him. He sat Clint down and gave him an ultimatum that would change both of their lives forever. Get help, or lose me forever. Those were Ron's exact words, quiet but cutting. They came from a place of fear, pain, and devotion all tangled together. It wasn't the voice of a Hollywood legend. It was the voice of a brother watching the most important person in his life disappear right in front of him. That moment, just like so many in Ron's life, wasn't about fame or success. It was about survival. It was about love, and the lengths you'll go to protect it, even when it hurts. Clint Howard made a choice that changed everything. He chose to fight. Instead of letting the darkness win, he picked recovery over destruction, and it saved his life. By 2021, the Howard brothers stepped into the light together, releasing their powerful memoir, The Boys. In it, they opened up about their journey with brutal honesty, crediting pure, unshakable family love for pulling Clint back from the edge. It was raw, heartfelt, and real. But now, decades later, Ron faces a new kind of fear. One he can't outwork, can't control, can't direct his way around. Clint has been battling a serious health issue, one Ron quietly described as life-altering. He's kept the details private, but his voice, his tired posture, and the heaviness in his eyes have said more than any official statement ever could. This isn't some small setback. It's the kind of illness that flips a family's world upside down, turning long days into hospital visits and long nights into endless waiting rooms filled with quiet, unspoken worry. For a man like Ron, someone who built his entire career on control, precision, and problem solving, this has been a brutal lesson in powerlessness. He can't yell, "Cut," this time. He can't reset the scene. He can't protect his brother the way Clint once protected him back when fame got too heavy and the cameras felt too close. For the first time in decades, Ron Howard admitted something the world never thought he'd say. He's scared. Not scared of critics, or flops, or pressure from the industry, but of something much deeper. Of losing the one person who's been there beside him through every twist of his life story. That kind of fear, pure, helpless, and human, changed him. Even his closest friends noticed it. There's a vulnerability in Ron now that wasn't there before, a softness that comes from realizing that no amount of hard work or brilliance can rewrite fate. And that's exactly why the news of Rob Reiner's passing struck him so painfully. It wasn't just about grief. It was reflection. Because as Clint's health worsened, Ron was forced to face a truth he'd buried for years. No matter how many awards line your shelves, no matter how perfectly you frame the shot, some stories are bigger than you. For decades, Ron had been the calm in the storm, the man guiding Hollywood's chaos with quiet mastery. The one who could take any challenge and turn it into something beautiful. But now, he's confronting something no camera can capture, no director's cut can fix. For the first time ever, Ron Howard is staring his own fragility right in the face, stripped of cameras, applause, and the safety of creative control. In recent interviews, Ron's honesty has stunned fans and friends alike. He said what he's going through with Clint's health has shaken him more deeply than anything in his career. Not the stress behind Apollo 13, not the disappointment of EDTV, not even the uphill battle he faced on Solo, a Star Wars story. None of it comes close to the raw, paralyzing fear of losing his brother, the one person who's always been his mirror, his anchor, and the living proof that he was never alone in his story. For the man who spent half a century crafting perfect endings for everyone else, Ron Howard is now learning one of life's hardest truths. Some stories can't be directed. Some endings can't be controlled. And sometimes, all you can do is hold on and love harder than ever before. Ron Howard has spoken about the long, sleepless nights, those quiet hours when memories of childhood loop in his mind like an old film reel. He replays every detail: the tiny schoolroom tucked inside Desilu Studios, the whispered talks he and Clint shared between takes, the way his brother's presence could turn those cold, fluorescent-lit sound stages into something that actually felt warm. But what used to be comforting nostalgia has now turned into something heavier, reminders of everything he stands to lose. Ron has opened up about a guilt that runs deep, guilt that while his own career skyrocketed into the stratosphere, Clint was quietly fighting his own demons behind the scenes. Guilt that he didn't see the warning signs sooner. Guilt that he couldn't protect his brother the way Clint once shielded him from the loneliness of growing up under those unrelenting studio lights. That kind of regret doesn't fade. It reshapes you. And for Ron, it's done exactly that. This new chapter of his life, one built on love, fear, and hard-earned wisdom, has forced him to slow down. The man who once thrived on 18-hour days and back-to-back projects has learned to step back. He's turned down major films that would pull him away from home for months at a time. Even Imagine Entertainment, the powerhouse studio he co-founded back in 1985, now runs with more independence, giving Ron something he once thought impossible: time. No more endless call sheets, no more all-nighters in the editing room. These days, his life revolves around what truly matters: his family, his brother, and the fragile beauty of simply being there. This new, grounded version of Ron, softer, slower, and real, makes his reflections on Rob Reiner's passing hit even deeper. It's one legend quietly honoring another, both men defined not just by success, but by how much they cared, sometimes to the point of breaking. Now, Ron's world moves to a gentler rhythm. Family dinners have replaced production meetings. Quiet conversations have taken the place of studio calls. The simple, irreplaceable moments, the laughter at the table, the small talk on a walk, the feeling of just being home. Those are now the heartbeat of his life. He's made it clear, he refuses to lose those moments again. And in one of the most emotional confessions of his entire career, Ron admitted something that left fans stunned. He said that the silence, the time between projects, has taught him more than any movie ever could. For the first time, he said it out loud. He spent decades telling everyone else's stories, but he forgot to tell his own. Now, at 71, with a legacy worth over $200 million and a lifetime of triumphs behind him, Ron Howard is seeing his journey through a different lens. All the awards, all the hits, all the standing ovations, none of it means a thing if the people you love start to fade from your life. That's the truth he's living by now. Fans were stunned, not because Ron had struggled, but because he'd hidden it so well. The man who always seemed calm, steady, and endlessly kind had been carrying quiet pain for years, never letting the cracks show. But when he finally spoke, the heartbreak poured through every word. It was a reminder that even the people who seem the strongest are often fighting silent battles no one sees. Some wounds, it turns out, never fully heal, not even for Hollywood's most beloved storyteller. But in the stillness of this slower, more peaceful chapter, Ron is finally learning to let go of the weight he's carried for so long. He's finding meaning not in the applause, but in the quiet moments, the kind of peace that can only come from choosing life over legacy and love over everything else. The world around Ron Howard shattered once again. Another kind of loss, sudden, shocking, and painfully real, ripped through Hollywood like a lightning strike. The devastating news of Rob Reiner's passing hit with a force no one saw coming. Ron was already standing on emotional thin ice, weighed down by fear, guilt, and the heartbreak of watching his brother Clint's health decline. And then came that headline that froze him in place: Rob Reiner, gone at 78. His wife, Michelle Singer, too. The news tore through the entertainment world like a storm. Friends, fans, and longtime collaborators were left speechless, stunned by how quickly everything had changed. For Ron, though, this wasn't just another Hollywood tragedy. It was a gut punch straight from life itself. He had already been living in the shadow of loss, trying to hold on while watching someone he loved fade before his eyes. And now, another person who had quietly defined so much of his own story was suddenly gone. As the industry reeled, Ron, the man always known for his calm, his balance, and his quiet strength, was shaken in a way few had ever seen before. For decades, he had been the one who kept it together, the one who spoke softly while others shouted. But this broke through every layer of control he'd built. The suddenness, the horror, the sheer unfairness of it all. It hit him hard, deep, and fast. Ron had always admired Rob, not just as a filmmaker, but as a creative force of nature. Rob's fierce energy, his sharp humor, and his fearless activism stood in perfect contrast to Ron's own calm, methodical approach. Yet, beneath those differences, they shared something rare: the same creative fire, that same deep understanding of what it means to tell stories that matter. Both men had been molded by Hollywood since childhood, born into the business, raised under the lights, pushed to perform before they even knew who they were. Both had battled through studio politics, fought for creative control, and carried the invisible pressure of keeping their work authentic in an industry that constantly begged them to compromise. They were, in every sense, two sides of the same coin. Rob, bold and unfiltered; Ron, patient and precise, yet both driven by the same hunger for truth. So when the terrible reports surfaced, reality hit like a fist to the chest. The details that followed were unbearable, the kind that made the entire entertainment world fall silent in disbelief. Authorities confirmed that Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Singer, had both been found deceased in what police described as a tragic scene discovered by their daughter, Rory. It was devastating, incomprehensible, not the kind of peaceful passing anyone could accept. The story spread fast, each update harder to process than the last. For most, it was a heartbreaking loss. But for Ron, already carrying the emotional toll of his brother Clint's declining health, it struck something even deeper. This wasn't just another loss, it was a mirror of his own greatest fears, watching the people who helped shape his life vanish in ways he couldn't stop or understand. Ron Howard, the man known for steady hands and unshakable grace under pressure, found himself trembling under the weight of something no amount of experience could prepare him for. This tragedy didn't just mark the end of an era. It cracked open an emotional fault line he had spent years keeping sealed. Because for all the fame, all the control, all the success, nothing in Ron's world could make sense of losing someone like Rob Reiner. Not like this. Those closest to Ron say they've never seen him like this. Visibly shaken, eyes hollow, his calm composure gone. He wasn't just mourning the loss of a friend and fellow filmmaker. He was haunted by the brutality of it all. "It's beyond comprehension," one insider shared quietly. Ron just kept repeating, "How could this happen to Rob? How could this happen to Michelle?" The disbelief hung in every word, raw, fragile, and painfully human. For a man who built his entire life on controlling chaos through storytelling, this shattered something deep inside. His world, once grounded in order and reason, suddenly made no sense. There was no script to rewrite, no edit to soften the ending, just reality, cruel and unfiltered. For the first time, Ron Howard found himself staring straight into a darkness that no amount of directing or experience could explain. This tragedy didn't just shake him, it broke him. It tore apart his sense of safety, his belief that things could somehow be fixed with enough patience or care. The news rippled through Hollywood like an earthquake, flooding social media and news outlets with messages of heartbreak, disbelief, and love for Rob Reiner. The response was overwhelming, a wave of grief that proved just how deeply Rob had touched people, not only with his movies, but with his courage, his voice, and his fearless honesty. But for Ron, that grief carried another weight, something painfully personal. As tributes poured in from around the world, he couldn't stop seeing his own reflection in the loss. Every message about Rob's passion and integrity echoed Ron's private struggle with guilt and grief. His fear of losing his brother Clint, his exhaustion from carrying too much for too long, and now, the hollow ache of losing a man who had walked a path so parallel to his own. Ron had always admired Rob's boldness, the way he spoke his truth without hesitation, jumping headfirst into debates most directors would avoid. Rob used his voice to shake the room, while Ron preferred the quiet power of storytelling, showing people who they were rather than telling them what to think. But in that moment, those differences didn't matter. The spotlight, the styles, the decades of creative contrasts, all of it dissolved. What remained was simple, unguarded heartbreak, the kind that strips everything else away and leaves only the shared fragility that connects us all. Friends said Ron couldn't stop thinking about Rob and Michelle's final moments. Already raw from watching Clint's health decline, the thought of more loss, more time slipping away, tore into him. One colleague said, "He looked like a man carrying two griefs at once." And maybe he was. Ron found himself thinking back to Rob's final interview, the one that left fans and friends in tears. In it, Rob spoke with that familiar warmth about love, family, and legacy. The words were filled with peace, as if he'd made peace with time itself. The irony cut deep. Rob had reflected on mortality with such calm grace, never imagining his story would end so suddenly, so violently. When Ron finally broke his silence, he did it his way, quietly, humbly, and without any Hollywood polish. In a brief public statement, his words were simple but heavy with emotion. He didn't speak of Rob Reiner, the Hollywood legend. He spoke of Rob, the man, the friend who made people laugh, the storyteller who cared too much, the soul who carried passion like a torch. It wasn't just grief, it was respect, love, and disbelief all tangled together. And through those few words, the world could feel it. The heartbreak of a man who had spent his entire life bringing order to chaos, now left to face a story he couldn't rewrite. Ron Howard spoke softly, his voice trembling but full of love. He described Rob Reiner as a man devoted to love, truth, and family, someone who used his platform to challenge the world and make people think, even when they didn't always agree. Ron praised that courage, the kind of fearless honesty that set Rob apart. Then, in a voice that cracked under the weight of grief, he said, "This kind of senseless loss, it makes you question everything. It makes you hold your loved ones closer." Ron's usual calm gave way to raw emotion. Rob and Michelle were passionate people, he continued, devoted to each other and to making a difference. That's the kind of legacy you never forget. Their loss, in such a devastating, senseless way, is a wound to us all. His words hung heavy in the air. Then, his voice broke once more as he added quietly, "My heart goes out to their children, especially to Rory, who found them. No one should ever have to face something so heartbreaking." Those words, simple, human, and full of ache, captured what an entire community was feeling. Hollywood wasn't just mourning two public figures. They were mourning family, the kind of people who had shaped hearts and inspired change through the art they made and the lives they lived. As Ron continued speaking, the tone shifted, from grief to reflection. He began to talk about something deeply personal, something that connected him, Rob Reiner, and countless others who had grown up under the same relentless spotlight. "We grow up together in this business," Ron said quietly. "Some of us, from the time we're kids, we become witnesses to each other's stories, the highs, the lows, the moments no one else ever sees." He paused, visibly fighting to steady himself before adding, "When something like this happens, it stops you. It forces you to see how fragile it all really is, how unpredictable, how quickly it can all change in a single heartbeat." For Ron, who was already watching his brother Clint fight a painful health battle, Rob and Michelle's sudden passing felt like life twisting the knife. It wasn't just tragedy. It was a cruel reflection of everything he was already living through. Another reminder that no matter how much control you think you have, life always finds a way to remind you who's really in charge. This heartbreak didn't just break his spirit, it deepened it. It stripped away every illusion of control and reinforced every truth Ron had recently begun to understand. It reminded him why he had slowed down, why he'd made the choice to step away from endless work and constant noise. It pushed him to hold tighter to the people who mattered, to stop letting precious moments slip by in the name of perfection or success. He admitted that the tragedy made his vow to be present hit even harder. It gave new meaning to the lessons he'd been learning over time, that fame fades, trophies gather dust, but love, time, and connection are what truly last. The heartbreaking end of Rob Reiner's life, a man who lived boldly, loved loudly, and created endlessly, became something more for Ron Howard. It wasn't just loss. It was a mirror, a warning, and a lesson, all wrapped together. It reminded him, and everyone watching, that no matter how bright the lights of Hollywood shine, they eventually dim. The real legacy isn't found in box office numbers or red carpet moments. It's in what happens off camera, in the laughter shared at home, the hugs that hold a family together, and the love you give while you still can. And as Ron stood in the quiet that followed, one truth became clearer than ever. The stories that matter most aren't the ones you film. They're the ones you live. In the weeks that followed Rob Reiner's devastating passing, something strange began to stir around Ron Howard. A quiet, unspoken tension that no one could quite put into words. It wasn't anger, it wasn't blame. It was the weight of unfinished history, the kind that hangs between two men who spent decades orbiting each other, connected by respect, divided by rivalry, and bound together by a shared obsession with storytelling. Their friendship had always been layered, deep, complicated, and impossible for outsiders to fully decode. Beneath the surface admiration and the public show of mutual respect, there was also a competitive spark, quiet, sharp, and sometimes just enough to sting. Rob and Ron had walked side by side through Hollywood for years, their careers running almost parallel. Both sons of the industry, both gifted storytellers, both men who understood that every bit of greatness came with a cost. But their styles? Totally opposite. Rob Reiner was fearless, the kind of voice that demanded to be heard, loud, passionate, unfiltered. He wanted to shake the table, push the world to think harder, feel deeper, question everything. Ron Howard, on the other hand, was the calm in the storm, careful, composed, and endlessly precise. He believed in the quiet power of storytelling, in letting emotion speak for itself rather than shouting it out loud. That difference, that creative divide, was part of what made them great. But it also created friction. Even their friends could feel it sometimes. That unspoken edge whenever they shared the same room. There were whispers in the industry that, over the years, they'd quietly competed for the same scripts, stories passing between studios, producers torn between Reiner's fire and Howard's finesse. It was never public, never petty, but it was real. They were like two planets locked in the same orbit, pulled together by admiration, yet constantly drifting apart by pride. Now, in the aftermath of Rob's sudden loss, that old tension feels haunting. People close to Ron say he's been replaying memories in his head, moments when he could have called, should have reached out, but didn't. Friends remember seeing them at award shows and premieres, always polite, always respectful, but with just a little distance in their eyes. They admired each other deeply, one longtime friend said, but they also challenged each other, maybe more than either of them wanted to admit. And now, with Rob gone, Ron is left carrying that invisible weight. The guilt of a friendship that never found closure. The ache of rivalry without reconciliation. In one recent interview, when asked about Rob, Ron paused for a long time. The room went quiet. Then, in a voice soft but heavy, he said, "We didn't always see eye to eye, but he made me better. Maybe I just never told him that." That one line said it all. Short, simple, but loaded with decades of emotion. Two men who built their legacies side by side, forever linked by mutual respect, creative tension, and the haunting question of what might have been if there had just been one more conversation. As weeks turned into months, that emotional current only deepened. Hollywood was still grieving, still honoring Rob's legacy with candlelight tributes and award show dedications. But behind all the tributes and heartfelt speeches, something else was quietly unraveling, the unspoken truth about what really existed between these two cinematic giants. Insiders started to look back, revisiting old interviews, subtle exchanges, tiny moments that suddenly seemed heavier in hindsight. There had always been an undercurrent between Rob and Ron, not hostility, but that electric tension that comes when two perfectionists recognize a piece of themselves in the other. They weren't enemies, they were reflections, both striving for truth, both chasing authenticity in a business built on illusion. Rob Reiner's boldness often pulled Ron Howard out of his comfort zone, pushing him to take bigger risks, to chase deeper truths in his storytelling. And in return, Ron's patience, discipline, and precision challenged Rob to slow down and dig beneath the surface. They weren't rivals in the traditional sense. They were mirrors, each reflecting the parts of the other that neither wanted to face. In recent interviews, Ron has started to open up more about that complicated bond. "Rob and I didn't compete the way people think," he said carefully. "It wasn't about box office numbers or awards. It was about something else, about legacy, about meaning." His words hung in the air for a long time. You could almost see the weight of memory in his eyes as he searched for the right phrasing. Then he added, softly but firmly, "We pushed each other without even trying to. I think we both wanted to outdo the silence between us." That one sentence sent ripples across Hollywood, a quiet confession that beneath the handshakes and red carpet smiles, there had always been more. There were stories whispered by those who'd been there, of creative meetings that ended in tense disagreements, of studio pitches where both men unknowingly chased the same scripts, even of a phone call that went unanswered after a comment got taken the wrong way. Little things, moments that seemed small at the time, now pulse with regret in hindsight. Friends close to Ron say he's been lost in reflection. He's been pulling out old photos, flipping through letters, revisiting memories that once brought comfort but now sting. He's even been rewatching Stand By Me and A Few Good Men, films he once publicly praised, but now studies quietly, looking at what Rob did differently, how he told his stories, and maybe how they weren't so different after all. When a reporter recently asked Ron what he would say to Rob if he had one last chance to speak to him, the room fell silent. Ron took a breath, lowered his gaze, and said softly, "I'd tell him we were both wrong. It was never a competition. We were trying to say the same thing, just in two different languages." That line hit deep, because maybe that was the truth all along. Beneath the rivalry, beneath the accolades and the applause, what really tied Ron Howard and Rob Reiner together wasn't competition at all. It was the shared ache of two artists trying to make sense of the same fragile, unpredictable world, both chasing meaning through stories, both trying to leave something behind that would last. By early 2026, the headlines about Rob Reiner's passing had faded, but not for Ron. For him, it still lingered. In every thought, every interview, every long pause before answering a question. What the world had treated as closure, Ron experienced as a wound that refused to heal. Because his grief wasn't just about loss, it was about everything left unsaid between two men who had walked side by side under Hollywood's blinding light. He kept going back to their last real conversation, years before Rob's death, at a charity event in Beverly Hills. The night had been classic Hollywood, cameras flashing, champagne flowing, celebrities everywhere. But for a brief moment, the chaos around them seemed to fade. It was just the two of them, two men who had shaped generations, standing in a quiet corner, laughing about the madness of their shared world. Rob had grinned and said, "You know, Ronnie, we're both control freaks pretending we're easygoing guys." Ron laughed, but inside, the words hit harder than he expected. That was Rob, blunt, brilliant, and disarmingly honest. Ron never forgot that line. And now, with Rob gone, it echoes in his mind like a haunting refrain, a truth that feels sharper with every passing day. Because maybe, in that moment, Rob had said what Ron couldn't, that behind the calm smiles and perfect direction, both men were just trying to hold on to something real in a world that demanded perfection. And as Ron sits with that memory, it feels like the final scene of a story he never got to finish. One about friendship, rivalry, and the beautiful, painful truth that sometimes the person who challenges you most is the one who understands you best. Friends close to Ron say he's been working on something quietly. Not another blockbuster, not a studio-driven epic, but something deeply personal, a script unlike anything he's ever written before. It's said to be inspired by two filmmakers, their shared beginnings, their invisible rivalry, and the emotional bond that defined them both. It's not about Rob exactly, one source explained, but you can feel him in every line. It's like Ron's writing the conversation they never got to finish. Word around Hollywood is that this project might be Ron's most emotional work yet. Part tribute, part confession, part farewell. Those lucky enough to have seen early drafts say it's packed with raw honesty, quiet pain, and deep admiration. The story reportedly follows two storytellers who spend their lives trying to outdo each other, only to realize, too late, that they were always chasing the same truth. When asked recently if the project was connected to Rob Reiner, Ron just gave a small, knowing smile and said, "Let's just say it's about what happens when you lose the person who understood you the most, even when you didn't always understand each other." That single line said it all. And just like that, it became clear. Ron Howard isn't trying to escape the tension anymore. He's transforming it into art. The rivalry, the regret, the admiration. He's turning it all into something real, something lasting. That's where the story lands, not with a perfect resolution, but with the quiet truth of two men who spent their entire lives trying to tell the world stories while still searching for their own. Ron Howard and Rob Reiner. Two names forever carved into Hollywood's golden age, each one a legend, each one leaving a mark that can never be erased. One, the careful craftsman who built emotional worlds out of honesty and empathy. The other, the fearless visionary who challenged audiences to think, to question, to feel. Different styles, different voices, but one shared fire burning at their core. The relentless need to find meaning in the chaos of life. And now, in the wake of Rob's loss, Ron stands not as a rival, not even as a peer, but as a man transformed, softer, more reflective. Finally at peace with the truth that legacy isn't about perfection. It's about connection. His story, Rob's story, Clint's story, all intertwined reminders that behind the cameras, beyond the fame and awards, these are real lives unfolding, full of love, heartbreak, mistakes, and resilience. Maybe that's what makes it all so powerful, because at the end of every film, every career, and every friendship, there's still that one shared truth. We only get so much time, and it's up to us to make it count. So what do you think? Was there really a quiet rivalry, a hidden curse, or an unexpected gift? Did it push them toward greatness, or keep them from finding peace? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I really want to hear what you think about the untold tension between Ron Howard and Rob Reiner, and whether this story hit you the same way it hit me. And hey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so more people can uncover the side of Hollywood no one ever talks about. Every click helps us keep bringing you these deep, emotional looks into the lives behind the legends, because some stories don't truly end when the credits roll. Sometimes, that's when they finally start to make sense.